right, we've got all kinds of people loading in here. Awesome to see so many familiar names loading into our attendee list. Thank y'all so much for joining us today. Let's give everybody just a couple minutes because sometimes it can take a second for Zoom to let everybody in once we start the webinar. Since we've got so many people joining from across the country, and I think we might even have some people joining us from Canada, doesn't everybody drop into the chat where you're joining us from, your city and state? Got our chat working today. We do have Canada. All right. Awesome. Canada, Washington, Colorado, Virginia, Pennsylvania, California, DC, Maryland. Awesome. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Like I said, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Paula French from Search Influence, and my colleague Jean and I are here joined today by Jim Fong of UPCEA Center for Research and Consulting. We are going to be going into some key points from our brand new marketing metrics research study that came out last month. Some of you have probably already read it. Jim is going to speak to how the metrics from the study fit into the big picture of driving enrollment. And then Jean and I are going to go into 5 tactical recommendations to improve your digital ad campaigns. Our hope is that you're going to walk away with both the motivation and the tools to improve your results, whether that is through your internal team or through your current agency. As the Director of Sales and Marketing at Search Influence, I help lay the foundation for productive partnerships between our agency and our new clients. I've spent more than half of my career working directly with our clients, executing and optimizing digital marketing strategies, including paid digital advertising, which we're focusing on today, and search engine optimization, which you've likely heard us talk about in the past. And so today in my role, I really focus on connecting with new institutions that we can help grow through the strategies that we employ for our clients. And I'll turn it over to Jim to introduce himself.
Thank you, Paula. And thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jim Fong. I am the Chief Research Officer at UPCEA. I've been with UPCEA for about 14 years now. And prior to that, I was at Penn State University and helping with them actually, I started off working with them on program development and marketing, but then I found myself having to re-engineer the marketing department there, working with a team of leaders to basically take it from a print-based creative kind of function to something that was more digital. And so we helped evolve that group in rebuilding systems and whatsoever, and budgeting and marketing budgets and staffing and the use of digital technologies was so critical back then. But now, working through UPCEA, I have the opportunity of working with many different institutions to do that on a very hands-on basis, but look at things at more of a systems level, a dashboard level, and a budgeting and a staffing level, as opposed to a tactical level. So that's the role I'll be playing today, and giving you some insight upon not only this study, but 1 or 2 other studies that are related, because my goal here is really to help our membership to become more effective, to kind of overcome this quasi-demographic cliff thing, which I think is a demographic myth, especially for those of us in higher education, online education, professional education. I really feel like we have an opportunity to save our institutions. And so I want all of us to be successful in generating new enrollments for our institutions. So that's my role and that's my introduction. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Take it away, Jean.
I'm Jean Libman. I'm the digital advertising manager at Search Influence, and I bring 13 years of digital advertising experience to the team. I manage and develop our team of digital experts, which is the team that works directly in the ad platforms to meet all the needs of our clients. And I have worked on higher ed campaigns over the last 7 years, supporting the team in developing full funnel ad strategies. And I also have a heavy focus on tracking and data analytics, which we are going to touch on today as well. So wanting to make sure that we can use that data to optimize our campaigns for success.
Great. And just a tiny bit about Search Influence is we're a boutique SEO and digital marketing agency with 18 years experience. We focus not only on higher ed, but other industries as well, which really helps us share learnings across verticals. We are proud to be an UPCEA Platinum partner for the last 2 years. We're also a Google Premier partner, as well as a certified women-owned business. And just by being here today, you have a chance to be one of 4 winners of a $50 gift card. We are going to announce our winners live today after Q&A, and then we'll follow up in email with a little bit more information about that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to start off with how the data in our study points to the opportunity that we see in universities today.
Thank you, Paula. And I'm going to highlight a number of data points, probably about 4 or 5 data points, and then we'll have a greater discussion about things. But one of the things I wanted to point out here is that obviously the study can be accessed through Search Influence or UPCEA. Download the report. It's got a lot of great information on it. Also download our past efforts too, because there's a report that I still reference pretty regularly around search engine optimization, and I think it's like the baseline report for any UPCEA marketer to access. And we did a study with them about a year or 2 ago, and where we looked at 100 of our members, and we found that we were kind of under optimized. We were not centered around the student, and there were so many opportunities to do better regarding engaging the new adult learner in terms of other things. So I just think that these are great resources, and I find working with Search Influence on this just gets our community working better together around a lot of marketing issues. This one slide that we have in front of us is just one example of that. One of the things that I'm going to just get into a little story. Back when I joined UPCEA as the Director of Marketing Research and Planning at Penn State and its World Campus, I just couldn't find data anywhere. Everybody was winning awards for marketing contests, but nothing was really data driven. So I actually executed our first UPCEA marketing study in 1998, just because I wanted to get at data like this. I wanted to figure out how many marketers do people have? What percentage of gross revenues were people spending? What are they spending on certain, certain media? And I couldn't get at that. And over time, we developed, more consistent surveys. But one of the ones that we're having trouble on, and we'll get at here, is how much are we spending per inquiry, per student, and whatsoever. So this one slide that you have in front of you is really more of a connection with an UPCEA survey that we did about a year or 2 ago. The one thing that we did ask in this study is what percent, how much do you actually spend on digital marketing? And it's about $800,000. Just to give you some background on the study, we had about 94 or 96 institutions respond to our survey, of which 44 were able to complete all the questions in the survey. And it's really a difficult survey to do, because what you've got to do is you've got to say, how much revenue do you have? How much you spend in terms of digital advertising? How satisfied are you? Are you doing these CRM things? Are you doing other things? What's your cost per? So it's very difficult to get a lot of people to complete all the survey. I was pretty happy that we got 44, marketing leaders to complete the survey, of which what we found out here is the average institution, the average member spends about $800,000. Now, on the other hand, we did a study for UPCEA in 2022, where the average marketing department spends about 8.8% of gross revenues on marketing. That was coming out of the pandemic, where I feel like we were probably spending a little bit more of gross revenues just to kind of move the market, reestablish ourselves in the marketplace. That part of the digital ad spend actually aligns with this study here. It's about 3.6%, 4% more or less of gross revenues is spent on digital ad spending. So we actually had a very similar number back in 2022. The other thing that we also had there is that of that 8.8%, about half that was being spent on either advertising spending or outsourced partners, marketing outsourced partners. So about half of the 8.8% of gross revenues is spent in that capacity. So this number aligns very well with what we were finding out in 2022. Will it hold up? We'll probably survey again in about a year. But this is, and I know that there were some differences, but this is an average in terms of those that finished the report. But we've also got to keep in mind that we have small institutions, we have large institutions. There's going to be some skewing here. I think what you got to take away from this in the future here is that where do I sit in this? I think you can actually have a conversation with me later on to say, I'm a small private member of UPCEA. How much does a small private member spend? And I might be able to say, well, half of the 800,000 or more than that. You've got to spend more than that. So there's some differences here, but we at least have a baseline to start from. Next slide, please. The one thing that we did learn from the study, and again, this is part of the study where, you know, it isn't just 44 people, there are more people than that. They were able to answer some of the perceptual questions. One of the things that we found out during the study that's not listed here is about half the people that participated in the study track cost per inquiry. And so we'll learn a little bit more about that. But those that were satisfied with their marketing campaigns, we only had 47% that were satisfied with their marketing campaigns. And I know this is something where if you look at your marketing campaign, you're going to say, well, I wish we could do it better. But 47, I feel, is a low number. I would like to see, well, I'm generally satisfied with it. I think we need to kind of look at that the baseline is fairly low. And yes, we're very critical of ourselves here, but 47% kind of surprised me as a number that of satisfaction. I would hope that it was going to be at least 2/3, 75%. I knew it was never going to be 100%, but you know, less than half are satisfied with their marketing campaign. And then you look at satisfied with capabilities to track success of marketing campaigns. You only have 29%. So even if you're satisfied with your marketing campaigns, you reach out even less that are satisfied with tracking that. And one of the things that we're learning about here is, you know, tracking is still fairly new. You know, it is still, you know, within the last 10 years that people are adopting their CRM packages with greater emphasis here. You know, it was still CRM was a strange word 20 years ago. So we're probably 10 to 15 years into the CRM process. I still ran into an institution about 6 months ago that was still tracking it based on an in-house method that was based on, you know, Microsoft databases and whatsoever. These are some things that we've got to get better at. And I think part of the challenge there will be, how do we actually get better dashboards? How do we actually access things in real time? How do we track this with our finances? We're getting smarter as a society. Having this ability to track really has been more mainstream for not only education, but, you know, retail and hospitality and businesses in general, only over the last decade or so. So I think higher education is a little bit behind, but you know, a lot of the industry is also starting to adopt this in greater measure. So in this case here, what we're finding out with UPCEA marketers here is that half are satisfied with marketing performance, and even less so are satisfied with their tracking and their campaign. And I've had many conversations with deans that have to ask, and then they have to wait a week or two to get at a marketing dashboard. So this is part of the problem here. Next slide, please. So one of the things that's always been challenging, and we've got to keep this relative now, is that we also ask cost per inquiry. And when you can track, one of the things that we cross-referenced in here is that, you know, if you're tracking your cost inquiry and you have that ability to do so, you're most likely more satisfied to begin with. And so if you have better data, you're going to be happier in general here. And that's the kind of way I run my life, just in general. More data, happier. Just kidding. But anyway, $140 cost per inquiry. So when somebody comes in at the top of the funnel, we expect that, you know, $140 is what we pay more or less. This is a baseline to budget more or less. But again, it's relative. If you've got a radar engineering boot camp that you charge $10,000 for, you know, I think cost per inquiry, you're probably going to be willing to spend a little bit more. However, if you've got a short course on building an Excel spreadsheet and you're only generating $50 per student anyway, you're gonna expect that to be lower. But in general, what we found out through the study here is $140 is a good place to start. Obviously, with graduate programs, it's a little higher, but we're talking small n at this point. And so there's a lot of margin for error in this case with ends of 9 and 16. And that's where we started losing people regarding the sample size. But Paula also kind of affirms to me that, you know, that range is not that far off based on her experiences. $51 for non-credit programs, maybe, you know, up to $200 for graduate programs. Some people are obviously going to spend more depending on, you know, the total cost of the program and the total cost of acquisition. I don't know if you want to jump in really quickly, Paula, to kind of give your perspective on this range, but back to my days at Penn State, back to my days work, actually in the more recent working with other institutions, I saw ranges, that would be around that non-credit program level, but I also saw ranges that were in the low 1000s as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what Jim said is, this is certainly going to be relative to your program offerings and the types of marketing that you're doing, but ultimately this is a pretty good range to be in. The range that people submitted in terms of their cost per inquiry range from $29 to $450. So it does give you a good idea of the spread. And then we took it to the next level and asked, what is your cost per inquiry for those given programs that you see listed on the right side? And so we knew that we weren't going to get amazing, perfect data for this year, but this is a better benchmark than has been published in our industry that we could see. We haven't seen any, actually. So this is, as far as we know, the only cost per inquiry benchmark that exists for professional continuing and online education. And so the inquiry types is really defined by the individual who is submitting the survey, but our expectation is that most people, it's going to be a lead form on the website, less likely to be an email or a call that's going to be included in their cost per inquiry that they're tracking this way. It would most likely would be an inquiry on the website, which is a question that we got in the chat. Jim, while I'm talking, we do have another question that came through in the chat, which is the percentage of revenue spent on digital advertising consistent across institution and enrollment side? Did the other study go into that? Yep.
Great question here. And I have a lot of data on that. We have like a marketing report that we could send you, so email me later on. But one of the things that we find out here is that the larger institutions spend less as a percentage of revenue because they have an economy of scale. The smaller institutions will spend 10, 15, 20%, especially if it's on a non-credit basis. They are spending more to launch that rocket ship off the platform there. And so the smaller you are, the more you'll spend as a percentage is typically what we see. Then we actually come across the breadcrumbs of institutions that are literally eating breadcrumbs. And it's because they've only spent $10,000 for the last 20 years on their programs, and that's all they have. And it literally comes out to half of a percent. There's a lot of institutions that will skew the data down that way, but then you have the other institutions that will spend tens of millions of dollars the other way. So it really depends on size of institution and what your focus is. At the programmatic level, there is some data, but that gets a little harder too. We like to have you look at it from a historical perspective, and if you're tracking data, then maybe there's some insight to say maybe you should be spending more to acquire more. A lot of that data is really kind of going to be self-contained within your CRM systems.
Mm-hmm. And we're certainly going to hit on that in a little bit.
So next slide here is something where I wanted to talk about, and this kind of ties in with the discussion here, is around the inquiry. Here's one of the challenges here is that you get a lot of stealth applications too. And some institutions purposely do the stealth application. Some institutions just don't know where their applications come from. And then there's a lot of differences that are based on programmatic things. And I'll draw the difference between hospitality industry and the engineering fields. Engineers tend to search for a lot more information. They'll gather up information and then they'll make a decision based on the information they gather without ever talking to somebody or asking for information. And then they will apply directly. Stealth application. At Penn State, we actually took an approach where it was, we decided that we wanted somebody to be able to find information, and we took a self-service approach. So we built out a lot of self-service so they could apply without even having to talk to us. However, we want people to talk to us too if they have questions. So we also found that through the inquiry stage, we could collect a lot of information through RFI forms, emails, and whatsoever. It's the top of the funnel and how we're populating our CRM. And then 37% may begin an application. This is at the credit level. The one thing that we're also finding out here is that there's another study out there that says, and Google and somebody else found out that an adult learner has 2 to 3 after they've gone through their information search, they only apply to 2 to 3 institutions now. There's an urban legend that they'll apply to 4 or 5 or 6. That might be at the undergraduate level, but the adult learner only applies to 2 or 3. And so ultimately, the inquiry to matriculation rate is about 10.4%. And the average time it takes is about 117 days that we're finding out. And so this is some good insight, because before the pandemic, when we did a similar study, we only had about 7.4% inquiry to matriculation. So marketing is so important here, and how you do your strategies and how you influence the process and how do you respond to somebody along the way. And how do you measure the cost of this? What's your cost per inquiry? What's your cost per applicant? What's your cost per student? All of these things are metrics here that we never know about, that we've got to track over time. So the next slide will just show you what, on the non-credit side of things, it only takes 71 days. And the inquiry to matriculation rate is 21%. Once somebody leaves a breadcrumb of their name and their email address or something, then their conversion is going to be higher. But we would expect that, because risk is lower, and typically they're looking at a smaller workshop and a less money as well. So, and they can make up their mind a little faster, and the process is not as complicated. So these are some things that we look at as well. So these are all things that UPCEA did with Inside Track about a year ago. And so this all plays into how do you actually calculate that cost inquiry? How do you actually create a data-driven culture there, where I personally think that it's going to be really hard for you to get more budget in a more competitive marketplace in the future, and also redeploy resources from one program to another program to generate and make higher priority decisions based at the program level. All of these are such an important factor as we move forward into a more competitive marketplace. So these are all some of the insights that I had as a result of the data. First of all, we got to have data. We got to have CRMs. We got to track data. And then we've got to be able to look at it at programmatic level. We got to track it with finances. The other thing we got to do is track it year to year to see where are we at today versus where were we at last year at this point. All of this data is healthy for you to get more budget in the future.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim, for that good setup for our top 5 strategies to improve results and satisfaction. So 4 of the strategies that we're going to talk about today apply to any digital advertising campaign type that you're running, whether it's Meta, Google, LinkedIn, programmatic display. When one of them is specific to Google search ads, which is number 4. We'll get into a little bit more specifics on Google search. So all of these tips that we're going to talk about are informed by the opportunities that we see most when we either take over a campaign or we evaluate campaigns that are run by others. So they're things that we know that not all higher education institutions are doing. So Jim has already talked a lot about the fact that you do need to start tracking that cost per inquiry. Only 46% of universities are currently tracking this today. And so if you need just a little bit more data to convince you to do that, Jim talked about the correlation between tracking and satisfaction. And what the study showed us is that 92% of those who are satisfied with their ability to track also reported satisfaction with the performance of their marketing campaigns. That is a very, very large overlap. So this really further reinforces the necessity to track these really important metrics. And so if you're ready to start tracking CPI, we do have a guide for you in the webinar resources on the Zoom toolbar. You can access a worksheet that will help you calculate cost per inquiry as well as cost per enrolled student. There's one tab that does it from a little bit of a higher level. Then there are other tabs that help you do it for a program by program basis. And when you're going through, it's going to provide you guidance about how we think about it. So what we include and don't include in the costs, and what we mean when we speak about a certain category of digital advertising, so that you can have confidence that you're attributing your inquiries and your costs to the right bucket. So essentially, when you're looking at these benchmarks, you can think about them from a more apples to apples comparison. When you track CPI over time, you can ultimately optimize for efficiency. That's really the goal here. So here's an example of a client where we've been tracking CPI closely for 5 years. Together with a client, we keep a pulse on this data monthly, which gives us confidence as well as some understanding when things fluctuate, whether that is up or down. And so ultimately, this metric serves as a jumping off point for us to then go look at deeper metrics like the lead quality driven by each channel, the CTRs and conversion rates on a given channel. So by being aware of CPI and making it a focus for a campaign, for our campaign strategy, that really helps us optimize it down. And so we were able to do that, optimize it down by nearly half in 1 year, which ultimately resulted in 2 times as many inquiries with a very similar marketing spend. And so thanks to CPI tracking, there is one thing that we know for sure: we are making efficient use of the budget we have. And you might wonder, okay, you doubled your inquiries. How did you maintain the quality there? Well, John is going to talk about that in a couple of points about how you can be thinking about the quality of your leads.
Our next strategy recommendation is to fine-tune your campaign's conversion objectives to drive more leads. So did you know that you can actually tell the ad platforms what specific action you want your campaigns to optimize for to get more leads? It's important to choose the exact conversion that you count as a lead, because there are many actions someone can take on your website, but you have to be thinking about what is truly most important. The more specific you can be, the better the platform, whether that's Google, Facebook, wherever you're running ads, will learn what you are looking for from your campaigns, and it maximizes your ability to get that desired action from your current budget, which can drive down your cost per inquiry. You might be wondering how this works. And, these platforms do have AI built in, which is why it's critical to be clear about what you want. The AI will then use that conversion data to drive more conversions that are similar to the ones that you're choosing. And those who manage your campaigns will have a clear goal when making decisions. If you have too many different conversions, the ad platform will get a little confused as it doesn't know how to value one over the other. And so you might end up spending money getting conversions that aren't fueling your funnel in the way that you want and are maybe not a priority for you. You can also set your conversion objectives on a campaign by campaign basis. Certain ads or sets of keywords should be speaking to your audience at different stages of the funnel. So for example, your awareness ads or awareness keywords may have a goal of brochure downloads, and perhaps your consideration keywords have a goal of schedule a tour or meet with an advisor. And lastly, your decision ads are focused on driving those applications or course registrations. So it's important to take the time to map your conversions to the funnel so that you can set your conversion objectives accordingly in the platform.
That's a really good direction to give there, John. I have a question that we have kind of struggled with in the past, or people have asked us, is what are the challenges that universities might run into when they're trying to implement this?
Great question. I think one of the biggest challenges is aligning on what you want at each stage. There's a lot of different things and actions that you want people to take on your website. And so it can be hard to prioritize and to choose to focus on a given conversion in favor of another. But by being very intentional about what conversion you want to drive, you can lower your CPI, because again, that AI, your ads will optimize towards more of those kinds of conversions, and you'll learn faster and get results sooner. And then the second challenge is, once you do align internally and with your agency on what primary goals you have to implement that into the ad platform. And so that may require restructuring your ad campaigns, which can take some work on the front end. It can be a little bit cumbersome, but it is worth it in the end to get that efficiency with your spend.
We have a few questions in the chat. I'm going to start with the one directly related to this and then pop up to a couple about enrollment funnel data. So one question is, are you using UTMs to track leads by channels, or what are the ways in which you can track the source by channel?
Yes, it's absolutely important to use UTMs. You want to be consistent across everything that you're doing, not just your paid digital advertising, but in your email marketing. There's even ways to use that in your SEO and your Google business profile. So being consistent with that and kind of using the best practices that might have changed a little bit with the transition to Google Analytics 4. Make sure that all that data is collected seamlessly in Google Analytics so that you can get this data that you need.
And then Jim, a couple of questions are related to, do you have enrollment funnel data for non-credit / continuing education? Somebody else specifically asked about funnel data for course enrollment that doesn't require an application.
I think what we have our marketing study that we did in 2020 and 2022. And I think that's got some data in it, but I think in terms of the non-credit data, we do have that one funnel where it was a UPCEA 2022 Inside Track study that actually might have been 2023. It was 2023. And so that has been released, and that shows you the 71 days and the 22% conversion rate. And if that's what you're looking for, yeah, that's the one. That one you can find in that white paper. And it says download the paper here. So that is probably the best source for that. We do have other sources, and you can feel free to connect with me, via email at jfong@upcea.edu, and we might have other data as well. The non-credit world is a little bit harder to track there, but this is kind of the best. We've done it a few times, but this is kind of the most accurate we've got it.
Okay. Great question. Thank y'all so much for all the questions. Keep them coming.
Right. Fine-tuning those conversion objectives do help you increase the quantity of your conversions, but like Paula talked about, how do you improve lead quality as you ramp up your marketing spend? So when you're able to track and leverage lead quality data, you can assure your budget is being spent getting quality conversions and not just any conversion. You are likely already storing your leads in a CRM and capturing a lot of info about them. So the next step is to tie a score to these leads, either manually or automatically, which will set you up to use that information in your campaign optimizations. Being able to do this manually is good, of course, but being able to do this automatically is even better. So what are some ways you can manually review and optimize your campaigns? The first step is to manually review those form submissions for lead quality. You should be asking yourself, do you want more of those types of leads? This information can be used to make adjustments to your campaigns in real time, and it's important to kind of be evaluating that pretty consistently. Next, you want to analyze the lead quality ratios per campaign or platform. Of the total leads from a given campaign, what percentage of those have you identified as high quality? You can also look at a cost per quality lead to compare across the platforms, and over time, watching these metrics when you make changes to your campaign and monitor the impacts of your adjustments allow you to have a better sense of the quality that you're driving. Lastly, you still want to monitor enrollment funnels to understand the downstream conversion to students to evaluate your overall strategy. This probably will be done a little bit less frequently and is kind of a bigger picture perspective when you're analyzing your data. So using all of this data can inform what adjustments you make to your campaigns or help you identify when a given tactic might not be working at all. So what does the automated process look like? The CRM systems in place do allow you to automatically qualify your leads, which then supports feeding that data into ad platforms. And you need to take some time to set up the proper scoring or qualification in that system. So in the ideal scenario, when a prospective student fills out a form, their info is sent to your CRM. The CRM can then identify the lead as qualified by verifying the email and phone number, and then scores or qualifies the leads over time by tracking secondary engagement and conversions with your website. Finally, you can feed that qualified data back into the platforms, those ad platforms directly, and the platforms can use this data in 3 different ways to improve the quality of your leads. First, you can tell the ad platforms to optimize the campaigns based on the qualified leads only. Second, you can build custom audiences with those leads. And third, you can fuel lookalikes and predictive audiences with that data. So setting up this automated system from start to finish allows your campaigns to just be continuously optimizing for qualified leads with less ongoing manual effort.
So, most universities that we have seen have not nailed down these processes that Jean just talked about. And so these quality optimizations are a really great opportunity to take your campaigns to the next level. Jim has spoken with a lot of universities about their CRM use. So while we're on the topic of CRMs, Jim, what other opportunities to improve CRM use have you seen?
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Go back to the last slide. And one of the things that I've seen is that once we get an inquiry, we don't really do a lot with it. we actually we wait, we have a conversation, a lot of institutions don't have a strategy set in place to actually say, okay, if this person responds this way or that way, then he or she goes over here, and all of a sudden things certain happen here. I just worked with one institution not too long ago where we secret shop them. We actually saw what happens, and we got a candy email, and then nothing happened after that. And so it's really a lost opportunity but you've got to think about CRM and how do you actually look at these data analytics in a very kind of more strategic fashion. But you've got to look upstream. You've got to say, okay, you've got this system in place. The system right now, we haven't had the full integration of AI technologies into this, but how we have to spend a lot of time up front to say, who's our qualified lead? What are their personas? Okay, what are their personas by program? Okay, if they behave in a certain way, how do we actually respond with them via technology or via human? And so how do you actually, you have to set up business rules within, whether or not it's Slate or whether or not it's Salesforce or wherever that you're using. You've got to actually set triggers along the way to get it to respond differently, because you're going to want a high touch kind of response in some cases, or a technology response in the bulk of cases. So these are all things that you have got to plan up front on. And I look at a lot of institutions not doing enough of that. They're also not doing enough to say, who are their students and what's their leaky, where's their funnel leaking? Where are the inquiries falling off and why? And I'll just give you one example is that I secret shopped an institution and I purposely did not respond to them. And I literally got 3 calls a day for the next 60 days. And I'm like saying, what's their strategy? Because if I'm a young Gen Zer who doesn't want conflict, who's very passive and introverted, you just scared me away after 2 days of this stuff. So you got to think through what your strategies are and what your personas are. What kind of student is more likely to succeed in your programs? And all of this is the human thinking part up front. And then the other part that's related to that here is that you've got to put people, trained professionals, to design these things out. I worked with another institution where their CRM manager was basically their web manager that got moved over, and he's been writing code. He or she's been writing code for the last few years, and now has become their CRM manager. Does not really understand enrollment management processes, but is something where is that going to address all the opportunities and problems that you have in your system? Is this person going to do a maintenance kind of situation, or is he or she going to make it so they're actually going to improve their numbers along the way? And then you can get into looking for lookalikes and looking for new leads down the line. These are all things from a resource level you've got to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that example, Jim, because we see all too often that marketing is being done by a couple of individuals with very specific skill sets, when it takes so many different skill sets to execute marketing, from research and analysis, writing, graphics, web development, and so on and so forth. There are just so many different skills that you need in order to be able to do marketing effectively. And so if institutions don't have the resources to hire and or train all of those skills in a few or multiple individuals, they're ultimately leaving opportunity on the table. Another question for you, Jim, in the chat is, what CRMs do you see institutions using most?
Well, there's 2 major players there, and I mentioned them both. It tends to be Salesforce and it tends to be Slate. Those are the 2 on the credit side of things. There's a wide range of non-credit CRMs out there. There's probably 5 or 6 kind of top of mind that if I say 5 and don't say the 6th, I'm going to get in trouble. So I'm not going to say them all, but there's a lot of really great programs out there. There's a lot of systems that'll span credit. There's a few systems that'll span credit and non-credit, or pass things along, or you can build kind of bridges between systems. But those are the 2. But one of the things that you've got to be thinking about here is that obviously a CRM is not a black box kind of thing where you plug it in and it runs itself. You've got to resource it correctly, and you've got to produce great inputs and outputs if you want good outputs down the line, and good dashboarding. And you can do some modeling at the end and get more predictive about your own kind of customer base. And then you've got to link it with your financial data, and that's going to be a challenge too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, one more question before we move on to our next point. So this is for you, Jean. Do you use multi-channel programmatic advertising platforms like StackAdapt that have segmented audience lists based on demographics, such as nurses, doctors, teachers, etc., to be more effective in your targeting?
Yes, great question. So definitely understanding the personas, of the people that you're targeting helps you to identify which platforms you want to use, and some are more limited than others. So absolutely checking out some programmatic platforms to see what type of audience targeting they offer, and see how that fits in with your marketing strategy is always good. Facebook can be a little bit limited these days with the introduction of all these privacy regulations, but it's still a very effective platform to use because of the AI that's built in. And again, that goes back to making sure that you're giving it the right information about the types of conversions you want to track. But if you have very specific demographics, then certainly kind of vetting out the different platforms to see where you can target most effectively is good.
Yeah. I'm gonna just kind of underscore something that Jean said, that she kind of said a little bit more of a subtext. Nothing, not that there's anything wrong with the way you said it, but it's Facebook has removed the ability to target very specific niche audiences to some extent. Programmatic platforms still have the ability to get really specific with who you want to target, for you to control who you want to target. What Facebook wants you to do is be more broad and let them do their magic. Whereas programmatic, you can say for sure, this campaign is for nurses, this campaign is for doctors, this campaign is for teachers, and you're controlling who is seeing those ads. Thanks, Sean. Alrighty, so this is our one that is specific to Google search. So what if I told you there was a way that you can see the exact keywords that a searcher typed into Google that actually triggered your Google search ad? That would be immensely valuable to determine if your ads are showing up for searches that are actually relevant to your programs. Thankfully, there is such a report in Google Ads, and that is the search terms report, which can be found in your Google Ads account. And so on the left, you can see the search term, which is the actual words that someone typed into Google. And on the right, you can see the keyword that you set in your Google Ads campaign. So in this example, if you look towards the bottom of the page, surrounded by the orange, a user searched sports chiropractic school, and our ad was shown based on the keyword that we had set up of sports degree programs. This school doesn't offer chiropractic, so ultimately we're wasting money here having our campaigns showing up for these ads and paying for that click to go to the website. So the nuance of how keywords are managed really can waste a lot of money driving irrelevant traffic. It's one of the things that we see a lot. And this is ultimately going to drive up your cost per inquiry because you're paying for visitors to your site that you don't need to be paying for. And so by regularly reviewing this report, you can identify those money wasters and the money makers. So when you find the money wasters, you can refine your keyword targeting. And when you find the money makers, you can increase your emphasis on those so that you drive more people through those keywords, which are the right keywords. Keyword targeting, like I said before, is a very, very common way to waste money in your Google Ads campaigns. And so by pruning your keyword targeting regularly, you can assure that you're spending money on the quality keywords that are going to bring in the right people to your site. And ultimately, this will improve both the quantity and the quality of your leads. So, Jean, you're on mute.
Thank you. The fifth and final strategy we're sharing today is landing page optimization. If you are in marketing, you've probably heard a lot about this topic. Landing pages are sometimes regular website pages and sometimes separate pages from your site that are created just for ads. The most common recommendations we make in higher ed are making sure there is intent and message consistency, including social proof and trust signals on the page, minimizing the amount of information requested on your forms, and including only essential conversion points on the page. We often find that universities are lacking in the intent and message consistency, so I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on that one. Consistency in messaging isn't just about repetition, it's really about creating a coherent narrative across from awareness to conversion that guides your users seamlessly throughout the process. Additionally, on Google search, this is one factor that is considered in your quality scores. So that directly impacts how much you're paying per click. With your search campaigns, you want to be thinking about the search intent of the keyword. And with your display campaigns, you want to consider the topic you're advertising and the stage of the funnel that the audience is in. Then you'll align your ad copy so that the audience is enticed to click. And once they click through, you need to be sure that the ad copy and landing page content reinforce the same message and call to action. And that, of course, that CTA matches the objective you set for your campaign. A little bonus tip is that periodically you want to audit your landing pages to ensure that any updates or changes are reflected consistently across all of your marketing.
All right. So a question that came up at the annual UPCEA conference when we were talking about a similar topic just a few weeks ago is, when should a university use website pages versus dedicated landing pages? And so when we say dedicated landing pages, we mean they're not part of the website. They're totally separate. They're created specifically for search or for display.
Yeah. This really depends on a few things. First, how good are your current site pages? So again, going back to that list that we had, making sure that they contain the right information to reinforce that message consistency. Are they focused on essential conversions only? And then if not, it's important to understand the flexibility of your website. There can be a lot of limitations with the large university site. So sometimes it's difficult to make the changes that you want in order to get your landing page to be optimized how you need it to be. Additionally, if there are many different teams working on the site, and let's say, for example, you have a great page on your site that's primarily used for SEO, and that team wants to make changes to that page, they'll need to remember to communicate that to those who are managing your ads in order for them to understand, why results might have changed. And that can be a little bit cumbersome. So most often we're recommending creating dedicated landing pages for ads so they can be closely managed and tested.
Thank you, Jean. A few more questions from the chat. First is, how will digital advertising pivot with third-party cookie deprecation?
That's a great question, and one that, I think primarily we need to focus on getting that first party data and tracking in place, because the more that you can use your first party data, the more robust your marketing can be based on things that you can control. And then on the flip side, it is making sure that we are feeding that first party data back into the platform. So we're keeping an eye on it. I don't know, Google Chrome just decided that they're not going to do anything until 2023. But I think another question was about programmatic platforms. If you're evaluating a programmatic platform, you want to make sure that you're talking to them about how they are adjusting to these third-party cookie deprecation, and that they have first-party audience data in place that you'll be able to continue to use as you are launching these campaigns.
Another question is, what about using tools such as SEMrush to identify the exact keywords that are being searched and use those keywords to make sure that you are targeting the right keywords?
Sure. SEMrush is a really good tool. It gives you a lot of information. If you're already running Google Ads also has a good keyword tool. So balancing those two things out. The benefit of using Google Ads is that it kind of takes in your current data to let you know what you might be missing and how those keywords might perform in your account. With SEMrush, it's good because you can also do some competitive research to see not just like what people are searching, but what other universities might be bidding on that are worth bidding on as well. So you need to factor in the search volume, but also, are they going to be driving the conversions that you want?
Great point. All righty. So to close us out before we move into an open Q&A, I wanted to reinforce the pattern that we identified in the marketing metrics research study data. So really that is that tracking drives satisfaction. So when you're tracking CPI and other important metrics, and then you evaluate them against your historical performance or industry standards, it's going to help you have the confidence to make strategic adjustments, whether that is, maybe you have to go to your team and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. That change that so-and-so recommended last month and we did it. It's actually having a negative impact. So it's going to help you see the way that the wind is blowing in terms of these changes that you're making. And then ultimately, by watching this more closely, you're going to improve your results and ultimately improve satisfaction with the performance. And so we would love to see in 2 years that 75% of UPCEA members are satisfied with the performance of their marketing campaigns and that 75% are satisfied with their ability to track campaigns. That would be a huge win because we do, to Jim's point, we do see so much opportunity out there to improve the way that these campaigns are managed. So we hope that today was a little bit of a step forward in that direction. And, you no doubt, or I would think would be walking away with at least one new thing that you can do to change your digital ad results. So if you would humor me for a minute, take a second and think through what your most important takeaway is. And we would love for you to drop it in the chat if you were willing to share that. And as everybody does that, I want to call attention to the resource section. So in the Zoom toolbar, you can hit resources, and there are 3 different things in there. We have that CPI worksheet I mentioned. We have the full marketing metrics research report available there as well, in addition to a marketing self-assessment that's essentially like a checklist for you to say, am I doing the most, most important things for my marketing? All right, and then we have another question, which is, does creating standalone landing pages affect website SEO?
I'll take that one. If you do it correctly, it should not, and you want your landing page to be blocked from the robots.txt file, so that way it's not crawled or indexed by the search engines. And that is one of the reasons why you'd want a dedicated page. That way, any changes you make for your ads aren't affecting any SEO work that has, been done in the past.
Yeah, great. Loving these key takeaways that are coming through in the chat. Let's see. I'm going to move forward and announce the winners. And then if anybody has additional questions, we're happy to stay on and answer those. So as I said before, 4 attendees will win $50. We'll contact you about how to get that digital gift card. So our gift card winners today are Anissa Barton Thompson, Sandy Buckman, Gloria Johnson, and Melissa Willers. So keep an eye out for an email from me this afternoon. We'll be reaching out to get all of that set up for you. Let's see. Any other questions?
I'd like to make a statement. I just want to encourage, I'm seeing a lot of questions about, needing a CRM, improving a CRM. And it's so important. Yes, because being able to calculate cost per inquiry, cost per lead, cost per applicant, cost per student really begins with the CRM. And then you've got to build a data-driven culture for this to happen. But one of the challenges there is that it creates a lot more accountability and transparency. And that is usually a very good thing. And you get resources around that. It also can create some challenges there too, is you create transparency and you may not be performing all that well in one program, and you're going to take your shots on that as a result. But as Paula was mentioning earlier, you tend to have a more satisfied culture. People are happier when you have that data flowing back and forth, and a dean doesn't have to come to you with his or her begging bowl to say, how's this program doing? If you can create that in real culture with a CRM system where you're spending a lot of time up front implementing and designing your dashboards, then and integrating it, with your digital spend and whatsoever, then you create a more positive, proactive environment. And I think I make it sound easy, and it's not, and it's expensive. But someone also said we need a CRM. You've got to also look at a point where how many enrollments are you losing? Could you gain? And what is that CRM going to cost you? Yes, a CRM could be a 6-figure implementation or more, or $1 million implementation, depends. But you've got to look at, where are you losing a leaky bucket? Am I converting at a high level or not? Could I be converting more? And these are all things for you to consider.
Great place to end. And to bring that full circle, that CRM data is going to be really critical for the future of a cookieless world if we ever actually do get there. So in order to have effective marketing, you're really going to need that first party data. And the only way you're going to be able to really use that data effectively is going to be for it to be everything to be automated and connected to your CRM. So with that, we will wrap things up. Oh, we have one more question, so we're not going to leave without answering that. So on the non-credit side, we just worked on developing course/program brochure. Do you suggest using brochures more for lead generation, as in collecting their information and then giving them the brochure rather than just offering the course/program brochure freely? In our experience, this has been a really effective way to generate a high level inquiry. So if you don't have that information directly on your webpage already, and maybe might be a little bit of overlap between what you have on your webpage and what's in your brochure, but having a call to action to download a course brochure or a program brochure can definitely be an effective way to get them into your funnel, get them into your CRM, and then you can remarket to them across ad platforms and begin to nurture them both with email and through your advisory team. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Our email addresses are on the screen. If you want to reach out to Jim about any of those resources he mentioned, he's there. And if you want to talk to us about any support for your digital marketing, my email is on screen, pfrench@searchinfluence.com. Thank you.